bottom, not the chat box. There's a Q&A box at the bottom. You could submit a question. So if it's something you need to ask us about tonight's webinar, you can submit it through there, and that gives us a chance to read it and get back to you. Hello to people that are joining. We're going to start in about 1 more minute. We just want to give people a few more minutes to call in. So thank you for joining us, and we'll start in about 1 minute. All right, so welcome everybody. I think we are ready to start. Thank you to everyone that is watching our webinar, either live, you're here, or we're recording this, and we will be sharing it with our entire school community, staff, and parents after the webinar for people who couldn't make it live. So we're really happy to have you. So we are going to start. I'm Caitlin Franco, the Executive Director. We're going to start by sharing a presentation that we are going to walk through. So the presentation should help sort of guide you through the information we're going to talk about tonight. So we're going to get started. So first, I have to start with this for parents. We have been sending home phone blasts to let you know whenever we are sending out important information to you, and we are sending out important documents via email. So do we have your updated phone number? Do we have your updated email address? I hear parents that tell me they hear from us all the time, and then parents who said they haven't heard a word. If you have not gotten a phone call or email from us, it means we don't have your updated contact information. On this slide are the phone numbers. Please call the phone numbers and connect to the main office and make sure we have your updated information. We're going to show you documents tonight that we have sent to you. So if for some reason you haven't seen these before, please make sure we have your updated contact information. Thank you. So agenda for tonight. So we're going to start with an introduction of the people that you can see, the panelists, and the roles for the webinar. Then we'll go over some documents that you've received so you can become familiar with them. We'll look at the topics for tonight. We're also going to be very clear on topics we'll cover in September. So if there's something you're interested in knowing, we want to be clear on what will be covered tonight and in September. Then we will start answering Q&A. We have a lot of pre-submitted questions or frequently asked questions that we'll start with. And then if time permits, any questions you ask during the webinar, we will get to. And then we'll wrap up tonight's agenda with just next steps to make sure everyone's very clear on how we're proceeding as a school. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So just to recap in case you joined, so I'm Caitlin Franco, the Executive Director. My role tonight is I'll be leading a lot of the webinar, answering questions, and helping to facilitate. Ms. Huza?
I'm Huza. I'm the middle school principal. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I'm Favril Philimy. I'm the high school principal. Welcome.
I'm Gabriel Park. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'm monitoring the Q&A box, and I'm just recording your questions on a later slide so we can get to them later.
I'm Emily Collins. I'm the Department Head of Special Education and L at the high school, but I can answer any questions you have at either school. You're welcome.
And I'm Megan Benway. I am the Executive Assistant to Ms. Franco.
So thanks. So now we'll move on and just talk about some norms for the webinar. So you know how this is going to work tonight. This is our first time doing a parent webinar. We did experiment with staff last week and it went well. So why a webinar? We have done meetings where they're a little more interactive with attendees, and we wanted to do a webinar because we have so much information to get out. We wanted to make sure there were few interruptions or distractions from other videos or sound. And we also wanted to be able to record this to share with our community. The norm will be if you have a question you need to submit throughout the webinar that you want us to answer. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A function. Use the Q&A function. You can submit a question with your name or anonymously. There's a chat as well. The chat we will not be using to read questions. I actually won't be able to read that and answer at the same time. So please don't use the chat. Gabriel Park will be answering the Q&A questions so you can direct them to him. And then the last two bullets just say, you know, we're going to get through whatever we can in an hour. If we don't get to your questions tonight, if you submitted a question with your name, I will get back to you personally. If you submitted a question that was anonymous, I will make sure that in our next webinar, that question is included in the next webinar. So your question will eventually be answered. So now we can move on to document review. So Ms. Huza is going to screen share. She's doing a great job right now, and she's going to go through 3 different documents. The documents that you should have received from us are a stakeholder guide. So that is accessible on our website. You should have gotten it in your email. You just had it up on the website right there, Ms. Huza, on the second link. The stakeholder guide, you can download in any language. It looks like this. We're going to use this document tonight, the parent survey, which all parents, hopefully you've seen this. If not, once again, the link has been emailed out to you. And the last document, which is a draft, I keep saying that because we're waiting on a lot more information to finalize, but we wanted to share it, is our health considerations. We're going to review this in detail in September once there's more information we're still waiting on from the Department of Health, the DOE, and finalizing our health procedures. We felt it important to share with our staff and parents ahead of time to give you an idea of the direction we're heading and also to get feedback. If there's things, I've already received a lot of feedback on things that you love and things you want us to improve on. And so we felt it good to share this as a draft. We won't talk about it in depth tonight, but in September, before we are planning to go back to the school building, we will talk about this in depth. Once again, if you haven't seen these documents, please contact the main office to ensure you have the correct email address. So now we're going to move on to the topics for tonight. So the topics for tonight, we're going to talk about instructional programs, school culture, students with disabilities and English language learners, mental health, social emotional learning, and trauma-informed instruction, technology and supplies. And then the topics we'll discuss in September, so I want you to know they're coming. These are in our stakeholder guide already, these topics, but when it comes to health, safety, hygiene, and when it comes to our scholars being back in the building, we will not address these until we get closer to going back to the building because we want to make sure we're giving you the most updated information. So we have shared some drafts with you in your emails, but we're going to really delve into this as we get closer. So we're finalized and as parents start having a lot more specific questions. And so that's why we'll address them then. So with that said, I included this. I think I just wanted to take a moment to recognize how many different opinions people have about remote learning, hybrid learning, going back to the building, not going back to the building. If you watch the news, our school community is really representative of what's going on in our country. And so there's so many different perspectives, and we realize we really respect everyone's opinion on it. We're trying to meet everybody's needs in our community. And it's challenging to try to meet everyone's needs, but we're doing our best to do it. And just making sure that effective communication is really the most important way to do it, which is why we're hosting this webinar among many others. And we really are asking you to, even after this webinar, reach out, email us, ask questions, because it's a two-way street. It's the only way we're going to be able to move forward through this. So thank you in advance for joining us tonight and for keeping the communication open. So with that said, we are going to start with your question and answers.
Okay, so our first question is, why did we push back the hybrid plan to October? And again, that can be referenced in the stakeholder guide, page 4.
So I hate changing plans. If I could have given you a plan in May for what we were doing in September, I would have. But we are adapting as things around us are changing. And so originally we did want to have an option for students who wanted to come back and their parents wanted them back in September. The reason we pushed back the plan is that, so we address it on page 4 of the stakeholder guide, and we sent a letter out. We felt that there were decisions being made by the governor and the mayor, which took it out of our control. There's a lot of health information that we still haven't received. There's a lot of decision making, especially our middle school that's in a shared location that we thought we were going to have in time, and it doesn't seem to be the case. And so as a school, we felt that giving all of our community a little certainty about September was the best way to navigate through this. So right now the plan is September, the entire organization scholars will be learning remotely. And then our hope is that October, we are able to launch the hybrid program for scholars and families who want it. And people who, scholars and families who choose to stay remote would be able to stay remote. Once again, this is all contingent on our governor and our mayor. And so we will obviously update everyone in September, but that is why we pushed it back.
Our next question is, who is our school's COVID coordinator?
So it's on the bottom of that page, and it's me. So I just wanted to point that out, that this was, as the executive director, it's something I didn't want to just delegate to someone else. I wanted to make sure I was involved in all the decision making, especially when it comes to safety in regards to this issue. So if there's any questions, you can use me as the point person, and I will make sure your questions get answered as soon as possible, but that they will all be answered.
Our next question is, where can I find these documents if I never got them in my email?
Okay, so if you're a parent and you're thinking, what are all these documents they're sharing? Obviously, you're going to get your email updated with us. We know that. You'll contact our main office. But if you look on our website page, Ms. Huza is showing you our middle school page. It looks the same on our high school page. You can see at top, we have the stakeholder guide in 5 languages. She's circling there with her mouse. And then on the right, where it says letters, we put all the letters we send out to parents. We send them in the 5 languages. We also upload them to our website there. And so you can go back and get letters back from the spring. And so we just want to make sure parents know, if you're not sure, you can't remember where you put an email or where you read something, you should be able to go on our website and you'll see everything that we've sent out to parents also uploaded here. So I think with that said, I'm actually going to take over the narration, and I'm going to switch over to Ms. Huza and Mr. Filamy, who will answer questions about the instructional program. So the first question is, I'm confused. Are we going back to the building? Can my child stay fully remote? Please explain.
So we will start our year fully remote, where every scholar will receive their instruction virtually. We will conduct all of our classes via remote learning for the month of September. Our plan right now is to transition to a hybrid model at the beginning of October, most specifically October 5th, where we will have some classes that do happen in person for students and some classes that happen remotely. We will discuss this a little bit later on in terms of the percentage of students that will be in at which time, depending on some data that we'll gather. But in the beginning, all students will be remote, learning virtually, and we'll transition to a hybrid model at the beginning of October. Ms. Huza, is there anything else you want to add?
Nope, it'll be the same for the middle school.
Great. So question 2 is, in simple terms, can you explain what the full remote learning program looks like? That's when the whole school is in full remote, and the middle school for the high school, and then also explain if there's any differences between the two for parents who have students in both schools.
So remote learning is really a setting where all students are learning virtually. There will be some differences between the middle school and the high school, but both schools are committed to providing all the necessary classes. We are making choices based on the things that we think are most important for students. So there are guiding principles behind our decisions. For high school, all of our kids will receive instruction in all of the classes that they take, including the classes that they need for graduation. and they will receive those classes on a regular basis. Most of them every single day, with likely one day being a day where they can receive additional support. There will be some classes that may happen asynchronously. What that really means is the lessons will be prepared but will not be delivered live. That will be a less frequent model that we will use, but it's something that can be possible for both schools. I'll let Ms. Huza talk about the middle school, and if there's anything else we add about the differences, I'll come back.
Sure. So at the middle school, we are making sure that during remote learning that our scholars have access to all of their core classes. So the humanities, math, science, social studies for our 8th grade, and then ensuring that they do have some access to electives such as art and PE. We will be utilizing synchronous learning, which is the live instruction of teachers video conferencing with scholars. We understand, that we need to maintain a level of flexibility to support our parents who may not be home, may be out working during that time. And so we're really trying to provide a more structured and scheduled day for all of our scholars, which, is an enhancement from where we were when we first went into remote learning. For more information on what these schedules might look like, you can reference inside of the stakeholders guide the links. You'll see a link for the middle school hybrid model, which does include what it looks like for remote. And then if you have any additional questions, you can feel free to speak out to myself or Mr. Philamy, and we'll review this more in September.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the next slide for instructional program. And so the question is, when both hybrid and remote options are offered, how do I let you know? How do I communicate that?
So one of the ways we try to really include parents in informing our decision-making is through surveys. So we provided a survey to parents recently that will help us to truly identify what the specific needs of parents are at each school level and at each grade level. Our decision is certainly going to be based on some of that data. We will be providing both in-person and virtual classes. And once we have analyzed all the data, we'll communicate about what the choices would be for each parent based on their responses to the survey. Is there anything else you want to add, Ms. Huza?
Sure, just some things to note. So as you can see here, we've had about 472 of our families who have filled out the survey. We have approximately 630 scholars in our building, and so there should be a survey for each of our scholars. Even if you have multiple children in the same family, we are asking you to complete an individual survey for each child. Some things to note are, in this question here, what grade will this child be in for the 2020-2021 school year? So you're thinking about if your child just finished 7th grade, you're going to click 8th grade. If your child just finished 9th grade, you're going to click 10th grade, just so that we can make sure your child is being, their survey is being located at the right school. You have the option to put whether your child has an IEP, an individualized education plan, if they're a student with disability. And then to check off whether you want to receive, you want your child to receive hybrid learning or full remote learning. And then based on your preference, it takes you to another section so that you can provide us more information, such as, are there any special circumstances that you want to know? Maybe you want to name the siblings that your child has. Again, we're going to do our best to try to accommodate parents as much as possible. But having all of this information in the survey is really important so we can start to make the actual decisions in terms of classes, school schedules as early as possible, anticipating that we'll be back in the building October 5th.
Okay, so the next question now is, how will the school handle substitute teachers during remote learning if a teacher is out sick?
So at the high school, all classes will be covered internally, which means we will have either instructional staff step in, or our leadership staff will step in to cover classes. So that's our first response to any absences to cover the classes that we offer.
It's the same for the middle school.
Great. And then the last question on this slide is, will my child still receive extra help during remote learning?
Absolutely. That's something we have been really intentional about. We understand the distance that virtual learning creates can certainly be a challenge for a lot of our students and can create greater learning gaps. So we have been intentional about creating time systematically for students to receive additional support. For the high school, there'll be time specifically carved out for students to attend office hours where they can get extra help from teachers. And there'll be other times when they can interact with teachers to ask them questions about any topic or content that they were confused about. And they will also be able to communicate via Google Classroom with their teachers to ensure that they get responses to things that they may not fully understand through the regular classes.
In addition to what Mr. Filimi mentioned for the high school, which we'll also do at the middle school, we do have the opportunity to provide targeted small group instruction, specifically in math and humanities, which covers ELA and social studies for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we will be providing specific schedules to scholars. We had done that during our remote learning in the spring, and want to continue that in the fall, and again carving out those very intentional times for scholars to have access to their teachers, as well as receive support specifically for our scholars who are struggling in reading through our RISE program.
Okay, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to move from instruction to school culture. And so the first school culture question is, how will scholars still interact with the deans and culture staff when we are fully remote?
This is a really good question. One of the ways that we will ensure that students maintain contact with our culture staff is through regular check-ins. Our culture staff will be checking in with scholars and with families on a regular basis. In addition, they will also be in our advisory classes. So there'll be times for regular interaction between our culture staff and students, and also parents and the rest of the family.
Similar for the middle school, and also trying to bring some of what we did for our scholars during what was our spring break, where there were opportunities for lunch with the dean or member of culture staff, and an opportunity to just engage in a little less formal activity.
Right. Then the next is, so this is in the stakeholder guide, page 19. Will there be after school activities when we are remote?
So this is one of those things that we would love to say we have figured out a way to still make it happen in the same way that it happened when we were in person. But unfortunately, we have decided to cancel after school activities during the fall. And this is something we'll resume as soon as we deem it to be something that is possible, executable, and safe.
And then for the middle school, specific to MMCC, they did a wonderful job of continuing some virtual programming this past spring. We're still waiting to see if that's something that they're able to provide again based on budget.
Great. And then the next question is, just going back. So the next question is, will scholars still have advisory during remote instruction?
The short answer is yes.
All right, that was easy. Good. That's the shortest answer everyone's going to get all night.
Yep.
The last bullet on this page, my child is lonely. Will there be opportunities for him to engage with other children that are not regular classes, but more social?
Once again, this is one of those things that will evolve over time as we engage in remote learning. We'll try to be as creative as possible to allow students these opportunities. Right now, there will not be many opportunities at the high school for that to happen, but within their classrooms, we plan on really having opportunities for students to interact with one another and not just be behind a screen. But as far as the sort of interaction that they engaged in while they were in person, we haven't really found a way to replicate that, but we will work diligently to be as creative as possible to find those opportunities to do that in a safe and logical way.
Great.
Similar at the middle school. Also, this is where it's great for parents to encourage their children to make sure they're signing on to their advisory. programming because that is more flexible. And they're always welcome to join class a little early so that they can talk to their friends there too.
Great. And just as we switch topics, I just want to remind anyone who joined, and a few people joined a little later, if you have questions that you're not sure if we're going to get to, you can, in the Q&A box, not the chat box, in the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box. You can send the questions. Gabriel Park is taking all your questions, and we're going to try to get to them before the end. So with that said, we are switching topics. So we're going to go to students with disabilities and English language learners. So the first question is, my child has an IEP. How will my child receive their services when we are remote?
So there'll be many things that we have in place to still provide students with disabilities with the support that they typically receive in person. One of the things that we will do is still provide different settings for according to the student's IEP. So we will have the integrated co-teaching model in full effect, and also sets for students according to what is required in their IEP. So even though we'll be remote, classes will still include 2 teachers where it's necessary, exactly how it used to happen while we were in person. We will also ensure that there are scaffolds provided for the content to give students access to accommodations and modifications. And we will also ensure that our students with disabilities are receiving additional support, not only through the mode and models that we mentioned earlier, but there will be specially designed time for students with disabilities to receive support specifically. Ms. Collins, I'm not sure if there's anything else you would like to add.
Yes, sure. Also, we are going to be sending out the remote learning plans for students with disabilities to kind of outline what your child's going to receive, whether they're hybrid or remote. So just like you receive them in the spring, you'll get them in the fall as well. And any related services, they'll still be getting provided. So if they come to school, they'll receive counseling in school, but all other related services like speech, OT, PT will be done remotely. And while we're in remote learning, their counseling will also be.
Perfect. Ms. Collins, you answered it for middle school too.
Great. So then the next question is, my child needs help learning English. How will she learn while remote?
Ms. Collins, do you want to take that?
So our English language learners will still be offered the same courses they were offered in the building. So at the high school and the middle school, they take ESOL, which is their English immersion class. That class will still be given. They'll also be receiving support from our L coordinator and teacher at both schools when they push into the specific classes, just like they would in the building. They can also, their documents and materials will also be translated for students the same way they would at school.
Great. So now we're going to switch topics, and we're going to be talking about mental health, social emotional instruction, and trauma informed instruction. So the first bullet is, my child needs a lot of support. In person, this is provided. How will he or she receive the support when we are fully remote?
So the short answer is we will continue to implement the MTSS framework, which is a proactive way to really address deficits and challenges that students may be having academically and behaviorally that will exist both at the middle school and at the high school. So that's our foundation to ensure that we are providing the support that all students need. Not sure if there's anything else you would like to add, Ms. Huza, before we actually expand on that.
I would just add that at the middle school, I had informed parents in June that we would be working to provide an individualized plan for each scholar by October. Included in the academic planning, we'll also be covering social emotional planning as well.
Okay. So then the next question is, will additional mental health care be provided to scholars to account for the trauma that coincides with attending school during life-threatening pandemic? So even though this question might have been written about when we go back to the building, I think it is important to just make sure we talk about mental health care, even being remote, dealing with the pandemic around us. What kind of supports do we have for scholars?
So I'll start. There are a few things we will try to do intentionally to help support with that. The first, we'll be continuing to train our staff in the identification and to be able to address the impact that the trauma has on our students. So that's the first step, being able to identify it and address it. Obviously, strengthening our restorative approach, which is in line with what I mentioned earlier with MTSS. And our advisory program will be a centralized place where we can interact with our students to be able to assess some of the challenges that they are experiencing, and giving them a forum where they can have open dialogue that can help to really relieve some of the tension and challenges that they are experiencing. Ms. Collins and Ms. Huza, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to add in addition to that.
I would just add that in addition to our regular full-time staff that we have, I know that our social work department has looked into adding interns, both at our middle school and at our high school, in order to support with the additional trauma, to make sure that we have enough staff on site to be able to support our scholars.
Yeah, and we've actually hired DOE social workers as well to support.
So now we're going to switch topics again to technology. So I'll ask myself the first question, and then we'll shift to Ms. Huza. So the first question is, my child received a Chromebook last year. Does she get to keep it? So it depends. So I'll talk about technology as a whole. As of now, every scholar will start this year with an equality charter school Chromebook. We have enough for 100% of our kids to have them. If your child, the second question was, if you did not receive one, you will be coming, which we'll talk about in a second, you will be coming to the school to pick up a new one. If you had one for last year, we will be reaching out to you individually. If you have a newer model, you will keep that one at home. We do have some scholars who got older models, and we are going to ask you to come in, and we are going to upgrade it to a new one. So all of our scholars will have the new Chromebooks starting this September, and we will have days at the end of August for you to come to pick them up. So please make sure you're sending your scholar to get their Chromebook or exchange their Chromebook.
Will we get any supplies for our children to use at home during remote learning? If so, what are they?
So we do have different supplies. So all of our scholars, in addition to Chromebooks, 100% of them were providing headphones. And so that's something we'll need everyone to come up to school to get headphones. Middle school students, since we provide, it works a little differently between the schools, we'll be providing some supplies for middle school students that they need. That Ms. Huza, you can answer if you want. We also have a little gift for everyone, which I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to make sure you come to school to get your supplies, and you have a little gift, because we want to make sure all of our kids realize how much we miss them when they're gone. And so, so we do have, every scholar should be coming to the high school building in August. We're trying to arrange it at the middle school, but definitely at the high school building. We will have every scholar pick up supplies, and you will be getting a personalized phone call from our operations team to review that with you and go over the schedule for that. And so I know the last question is, when will that happen? So that's the second or last week in August, we will schedule those days.
If we're remote, why do we need to fill out a lunch form?
Great question. So I definitely added this question. You've probably been getting phone calls from our operations team about filling out lunch forms online. Even when kids are not in our building, when they're remote, we will have grab and go meals available for kids every single day at our school. We need to have your lunch forms to help us facilitate that process. So that's one reason, because lunch will be available when we go back to the school building. Lunch will still be available, provided by School Foods.
And then how do we fill our lunch form out? Do we mail it in? If it's on the computer and I don't have access, how do I do it?
So you're going to call the main office, and they can walk you through it, and they can, if you don't have access or you need help filling it out, they can actually fill it out on the phone with you. You would give them the information and do it with them. And so it's all electronic this year due to the pandemic. So please make sure if you get a phone call, return it, and you can fill it out with our team. And so to switch, we're going to move on to the next slide. So that's operations. I added this slide in right as we were on the call based on, so I apologize, I didn't start with this in the beginning of the webinar. We've been working really hard to work on improving our translated materials and access for parents who don't speak English. And so Right now, the webinar is in English, obviously. We can set up one-on-one Zoom or phone calls to go through materials with someone individually. There's also a translation service we use. So I will ask you to reach out. The phone numbers are at the bottom, or you can email me if you need to set up a one-on-one time, because it's a lot of information and we want to make sure you feel comfortable. We also have a list of parents who speak other languages, so I am going to make sure after this webinar we reach out to those parents individually and make sure they have the information they need and can access it in their language. So apologies we didn't start by explaining that. Now we're going to move to questions asked during the webinar. So I think we have time. There's a lot. There's two slides of questions. So I'm going to try to kind of navigate them and answer ones or shoot them off to people. I've previewed them and I think we can actually get through all the questions. So the first is I had the middle school phone number wrong on the first slide. I can't believe it. So don't go by that first number. Ms. Huza, can you go back to slide 18, the previous slide, just so everyone can see the correct middle school number? So that's the correct middle school number. Please write that number down and the high school numbers below. So thank you for catching that, Migdalia. Thank you for that. Question 2, is the slideshow available in Spanish? So we will translate the slideshow after this and we will send it out in all languages. And we will also send a recording. We're going to upload this to YouTube and send it out to all parents. That's question 2. Question 3, Ms. Huza, if you want to take this, what is the first day of school for middle school? And if you can answer that for high school as well.
Sure. For the middle school and high school, our first day of remote learning is Tuesday, September 8th. We will be having orientations for our scholars the first week of September. We'll get parents that information, but first day of school, Tuesday, September 8th.
Thanks. So the next bullet is I completed an application for my second child for the middle school. Oh no, my daughter, sorry, question 4. Maybe we can number these. If someone could just change this to numbers, I think that might be easier for us to navigate. Question 4 is my daughter is an incoming freshman. However, I haven't gotten enrollment information. When will I get this? And it's the same as question 5, completing an application for a middle school child and haven't gotten information. All of our admissions has moved electronically, which is new for us. So you definitely should have gotten a link to register your child. Since it's anonymous, I can't get back to you right this second. If you could please email me your information, I can make sure someone calls you, or call the main office tomorrow. I know both of our main office managers, Migdalia for Squarey and Jessica Herrera, who manage admissions, can get you the information you need tomorrow. There should be a link sent to you from Teacheries to fill out all the registration information. So if you can tell us who you are later on or email me, I can help you and make sure you get your answers tomorrow. Number 6 for Ms. Huza, for the summer project assigned, I think this is for middle school, assigned to scholars, why is the video blocked for math?
Great question. So this actually goes back to communication you received around Go Guardian. So we sent out our summer packets for the middle school in June before we wrapped the year. And then we moved forward with increasing the oversight on our Chromebooks and making sure that we had better protections in place to keep our scholars safe across middle school and high school. However, because of that, some of the sites that were just more general did become blocked. Ms. Myers is actually working on adding those individual sites to Go Guardian so scholars can access them, and then that should be ready to go by the end of the day tomorrow. If you have additional issues or you continue to have problems with that, please feel free to send me an email directly.
Question 7 is, will the scholars be provided with laptops? How do I get one? So just to reiterate, every scholar will get an ECS Chromebook. If they have an old one, we will give you an upgrade. If you never got one, you will get one. This will happen in the last 2 weeks of August. You will receive an individualized call from our operations team telling you when to come in. I know we send a lot of phone calls out. Please pick up the phone when we call. Please make sure, because that's our only way of communicating with you. And so we really need to make sure everybody comes into the building during those days to pick up their computers or exchange them. And that's the same for question 8. All of the technology will be out the last 2 weeks of August. Number 9, so the same question, if you used a personal laptop last school year, you will still get a school supplied one. Our goal was that every student has one from us. And so there's no reason that scholars aren't able to participate in remote learning every day when required. So that was question 9.
Ms. Franco, and every scholar's getting a set of headphones as well, is that correct?
Headphones, Chromebook, yep. So everyone will be set up. Question 10, how will students be graded during the full-time virtual learning? So I'm going to throw this to Farrell or Amanda.
So I'll start. For parents who are returning parents with us, there will be a slight shift from the way we ran virtual learning in the spring. We will transition to including some things that weren't included to the same degree when we were in the spring. So we will count all the things that we typically count when we are in person. So homework will count, classwork will count, and we will also give traditional assessments. They might look slightly different than what students experienced while they were in person, but they will be actual assessments, whether it's a quiz or a writing piece that will be graded by their teacher. We will be intentional in ensuring that we are trying to foster effort and real assessment of what students truly grasp from the standards and the content, and not just give assessments that are 30 multiple choice questions, because we don't think that is as useful for scholars. But we will be assessing scholars, and that will be one component of the way we grade them. So homework will be included in the grades, classwork will be included in the grades, and we will also have assessments as part of the grades. Ms. Huza.
I would just add, we're going to do the same at the middle school. And Mr. Philimi and I are also thinking very carefully and intentionally about how grading might look different from the full remote structure to when we enter back into hybrid. So more information will come on that.
Okay, so to go back to the questions, we're at question 11, how many kids will be in a classroom? So that's a question we can answer a little more specifically in September when everything's finalized. But what I can say for now is we're following all of best practices with the social distancing and looking at square footage of each room. I would say that it spans anywhere from like 9 to 13 students per classroom, counting on the teacher, and it all depends on the size of the room. And so that is something we'll go over more in depth in September, but that's an idea of question 11. Question 12, what time will be arranged to clean out lockers from last year? So I can take this. So we cleaned out lockers from last year. That was done in June. We had pickup days for scholars, for scholars who were seniors or leaving our school. I don't know, Mr. Philimi or I guess it's for Mr. Philimi for high school, what your plans are for kids who did not clean out their lockers last year.
So we will follow up with more information about when that will happen and when when those things can be picked up. There are some uncertainties around what will happen during the school year, so we want to make sure we are following how things evolve over the next few weeks. But we will be communicating about whether and when scholars or parents can have access to the content that was in scholars' lockers.
Right, thank you for that. So we're gonna go to the next slide. We have 18 more questions. I feel really confident that we can get through them. We're gonna go for it, everybody. All right, so question 1 on this slide. So will you be sending out a uniform list for new scholars? So that should be included in your registration information. Obviously, we're not going back in person right now, but I will follow up and make sure that a blast goes out with information. So I will make sure that parents get that. Question 2, how do we get information on busing when it's time to return to the building? So just to clarify, busing is only for students with disabilities who have busing indicated on their IEP. We are still waiting. This was one of the reasons we delayed going back to the building for a month, because we've yet to receive detailed information on how that will work. As soon as we get information on busing for students who have it in their IEP, we will communicate that to you. Question 3 is for Mr. Philimi. Will there be a set schedule the high school scholar will follow?
So I'll answer this question in 2 parts. The first one will be when we are in remote learning. The answer is yes. Scholars will receive an actual schedule. And we will communicate more about that with scholars during their orientation, but also with parents, because with remote learning, it is extremely important that we all emphasize the need for a routine every single day to be successful in that model. So scholars will know exactly what class they have on what day and at what time. And the routine will be very similar to what they would have in person. It might look slightly different when we are remote, but the actual routinized portion of the schedule is something that will exist remotely, and also when we go back to hybrid. When we are in hybrid learning, when we go back into the building, the same will be true. We will provide more information about, well, there's actually more information that's available in our documents around what our hybrid plan looks like. But there will be an actual schedule that students will follow when they are in person and also when they are at home and not in the building. If you have any questions at all when you do receive that information or when you read it in our documents, please do not hesitate to reach out so we could provide you more information and more context.
I had to unmute myself. So question 4 was, how will remote learning affect scholars who have an IEP and who may need additional assistance? So I believe we covered this a little earlier. I think this question was asked before we covered that slide. So there is a page in the stakeholder guide that answers that. And Miss Emily Collins, who's on the call, if you want to reach out to Emily Collins, her email is emily.collins@equalitycharterschool.org. She can answer specific questions for you. Question 5 is, can you change hybrid learning to remote learning later on? Ms. Huza, you want to take this one?
Sure. So when you're filling out the survey form, it will indicate to you that if you have decided to have your child go back to hybrid, you can pull them for remote learning at any time. That doesn't impact our ability to schedule for the rest of our scholars. However, if you are electing to start or to continue remote, if we're back in the building as of October 5th, you will only be able to have your child go back to hybrid learning at certain points during the year. And for the middle school and the high school, that is based on our marking periods. So I can't give you an exact date because the marking periods are different for middle school and high school. But again, when we go back to hybrid instruction, hopefully October 5th, that's our goal, you elect for your child to continue remotely, you will only be able to opt them back into hybrid learning right before and following a marking period. If you elect to have your child continue, move into hybrid, you can pull them out for remote at any point. However, we do encourage all of our parents to think about what is in the best interest of their child and what is going to be able to provide their child with the best access to the educational environment that they need while balancing all of the health conditions that everyone needs to for their own families.
Great, and I think that also answers question 6, which is similar about changing back and forth with hybrid and remote. And Ms. Huza, if you want to refresh the slide, I know we're up to 21 questions now on this slide, if you want to refresh it. But I'm still confident we can complete it. So question 7 is, when the school goes back to hybrid, will scholars be provided PPE, personal protection equipment? So once again, we're going to talk really in depth. We're still working on some of these. If parents have opinions on it, trust me, people have given me their opinions, and I would love to hear more from you, so you can email me. As the plans right now is we are looking into providing face masks to scholars that fit a certain criteria. And so that is one thing that we will be providing. We will have hand sanitizer, soap, all that other equipment. We will have face shields available to staff to wear on top of face masks if they want. But as of right now, that's the only equipment we are planning on providing to scholars. So if you have other feedback or ideas on that, feel free to send me an email. I'll include my email address it's on the last slide, so you can email me as well. Question 8, how many scholars will be in hybrid learning at the high school? So I can just answer this, is that we don't know. We're still collecting survey data from the parents. And so as we get closer to actually going to hybrid and having parents make final decisions, we'll have an idea. I don't know if the question more meant how many kids will be in the building physically at any time. So if that is the question, what was meant, What I will say is that there will be about 50%, we will be at about 50% capacity. So about 50% of our entire high school population will be in the building at one time. But as of now, we definitely have parents choosing remote, so the percentage will probably be a lot less than 50%. Question 9. So maybe Ms. Huza, you can answer this. Does my child still have to write present even though her teachers marked her present during class? My child was marked absent during remote learning even though the teacher marked her present just because she forgot to write present in homeroom. So help us navigate that.
I'm sure Mr. Philamy will add on specifically to the high school. So one of the things we want to make sure that parents are informed of is that there are external stakeholders such as New York State that we are responsible and accountable to. And so the ways in which they deem a scholar being marked present are ways in which we have to make sure that we are providing systems for in our school as well. And sometimes just the teacher seeing them on one call doesn't necessarily meet the criteria that the state has established. So we will be using a set system for scholars to take attendance. And then just as the middle school did in June, we went back and audited our attendance just to see if there were other touch points such as work submission, attendance in multiple classes for the day that we could use to say a scholar was in fact present, even if he or she had not marked present on the form for the middle school. But again, it's about external stakeholder accountability that the school is responsible for as well. Mr. Philamy?
And if you want to think of it this way, the daily attendance is for exactly what Ms. Huza described, and the class attendance is really for the teacher. It's a way for the teacher to really monitor students who are coming to class and to be able to respond and do outreach, not only with the student, but also with the parent to ensure that the scholar can succeed in the class. So the class attendance is really for the teacher, and the daily attendance is really for the school and to be able to meet our requirement when it comes to external stakeholders.
All right, thank you for that. So for question 10, what are the safety protocols you have for now? So what I can say is in the stakeholder guide, it outlines some of what we're doing. Also in the health considerations guide, so that's a draft document that we decided to share with everyone to give you an idea. That's also how we're going to navigate some of the safety concerns in regards to if we have a positive case of COVID in our school, or if someone's has to be quarantined. As I said, it's draft, so it's open to feedback and it's open to more information. But those two documents have the safety protocols we've shared with you. Here's our first draft, and once again, you can email us with questions or concerns. Question 11, if my child does go back to school, will they need to use a uniform? Yes. So you will need a uniform. We do plan to go back to school this year, so you need a uniform. I know Migdalia actually emailed me that she did send a blast out the end of June about uniforms, but obviously if you're a new parent, you should have gotten it in your registration packet, but I have a list of things people have requested, and we'll make sure we send you a follow-up email tomorrow with all this information repeated about uniforms. So yes, you need one.
Ms. Frankel, if I could just add, I would just say for a very practical standpoint for parents, just keep in mind, scholars are going to be showing up to the building with masks on. And so them being present in their uniforms is another way for us to ensure, a basic level of safety while we're checking scholars in.
Great. Question 12. So I'm going to give this one to Ms. Collins. So question 12 is, my daughter had a 504 last year. How will I get that documentation for her physician to fill out and return to school during the time the school is remote?
Sure. We're going to be emailing this year's updated 504 forms. So you can bring it to the physician if you want. If you're having trouble getting to the doctor because of what's going on, you can reach out to myself or Lauren Nilsson at the middle school, and we can use other evidence in the time being, but we'll be holding the 504 meetings in September.
Thank you. Question 13, how will the scholars do quizzes and or tests? So Ms. Huza or Mr. Philamy?
I'll start it off. I'll start off by letting you know what you can expect not to see. You can expect not to see assessments that are just multiple choices or lengthy exams that really ask students to do just routine calculations or recall information. You and your child will notice that we will we will make an intentional shift in really asking students to reflect, to explain their thinking. There will be a combination of types of questions. This doesn't mean that we will have assessments that are completely devoid of multiple choices, because there's a place for it. But we will use different platforms to give students assessments and for them to actually complete it. We will most likely use the Google platform, G Suite, to in all of their the assortment of softwares that they have to have students engage in assessments. But as far as the content itself, these are the things that you can expect to see and not to see as we are in remote learning over the next couple of months.
So, Ms. Huza, anything to add? You're good? Okay. So I know we're almost out of time, but we're going to keep going. I feel like we have enough questions we can get through. I am just going to quickly ask Ms. Huza and Mr. Filmy if you could go to the last slide of the PowerPoint yourselves and just fill in information on our orientation sessions for new parents, so we can review that at the end of the presentation for new parents. So I'm going to keep going with the questions. So question 14 is, how can I know that my son is in class, because I did not know for the last 3 months at the middle school? So Ms. Huza, let us know how to do that.
So if that parent can please contact me directly so we can speak about that. The trends at the middle school from parents seem to be more, Ms. Huza, can someone stop calling me every time my child misses a class? So it is concerning to hear that that was the case. So I do want to make sure that I'm following up explicitly. That being said, we're really happy about some of the additions that Google Classroom has been making, and we are looking into the option where parents can be invited into the class as sort of like an overview user, so that you can see and track more of your child's work and what was assigned for them for that day. In terms of being able to see if your child actually attended an individual session. Again, teachers do take class attendance. So if you're not hearing from a teacher, you can always reach out to a teacher and or any of the instructional staff, and we will pull up that information. Or when you receive a check-in from one of our culture staff, which happens about once every 3 days, please make mention to them that you would like to have your child's individual attendance sent to you as well. But if that parent could reach out to me directly, I would greatly appreciate it. And any other parents who had a similar experience, so that I could take care of that.
Okay. And I can guarantee Ms. Huza will take care of that, so you can know if your child is in class. Question 15 is, are Chromebooks the same as iPads? And so the iPads were supplied by the Department of Ed for students with disabilities. They're not the same. So the iPad's completely separate from Equality Charter School. We helped you get one, but that's through the DOE. So we will make sure you have an Equality Chromebook. And so that answers question 15. Question 16, our scholar still has not received the food EBT card. What is the time frame? Who do we contact? So that is actually not distributed through us. We did share some information with parents about that card. And so I will make sure that in the email that goes out tomorrow, we will also have the EBT card information that we have. But once again, it's not issued by our school directly. And so that's all we can do, is give you the information. Number 17 is, I got notice that my child was accepted yesterday. Will I be able to get the summer packet? And so yes, we'll make sure that all new scholars got their summer packets, and I'll make sure I go over that with our operations team. So that's included in your registration materials. 18, will history be a subject included in the remote learning curriculum? So Farrell or Amanda?
Yes, for high school, all of our core classes will be included. I know the question is specifically about history, but I'll take time to go over all of them. Math, science, English, social studies, language, and all of our electives. And as we mentioned, advisory, we will make time for as well, and PE also. So we will include all of our courses as part of the remote learning. The schedule will be slightly different in terms of amount of time, but we will offer all of those classes. Ms. Huza, I don't know if there's anything else you want to
And for our 8th graders, they have a separate social studies class, and our 6th and 7th graders have history infused into their English class through humanities.
Thank you. And we're actually up to 27 questions, Ms. Huza. If you want to refresh, my eyesight is being tested tonight so I can read them all. So right now we are at question 19. Are scholars getting a bus pass? So as we know, if your scholars got bus passes in the past, when we go back to hybrid, they will be provided. But once again, transportation is through the Department of Ed, and we're still waiting on more information. But I would think that you are still getting a bus pass when we go back in person. Question 20, will phys ed be offered remotely? And so I'll just answer that for both schools. That's yes, we will have physical education offerings for both middle school and high school. Question 21 will be Amanda or Favreau. Will scholars be required to have cameras on during classes?
Yes. So for both school locations, scholars will be required to have on their video cameras. That supports teachers to be able to keep scholars engaged, make sure they are focused, helps to make sure that scholars are paying as close attention as possible, and also to make sure that they're ready to go if they're asked questions. And so to facilitate that, we will not be recording sessions anymore in order to continue to protect the privacy of our scholars.
Okay, so question 22. I heard some districts will require COVID testing for all scholars. Do you think Equality will require this? So when we go to hybrid. So I'm going to say that's one of the topics that's in the air. We have received feedback that we are not legally allowed to do it. And then I heard on Sunday from the chancellor that they're requiring DOE staff to do it. And then I heard today that it's going to be optional. And so that is one of the issues, that is one of the topics that we are waiting to get more guidance on. We will definitely provide a lot of clarity to families and staff prior to going back in person for October. And so we're not sure exactly what will happen with that yet, if we're even allowed to require that. So that is that one. Question 23 is, DOE protocol is iffy regarding discovering positive cases. Since the middle school is in a shared building, how will Equality ensure safety of our scholars if the other school confirms positive cases? This is once again one of the topics, which is why we delayed going back to person for an extra month, is we want to make sure we're working in sync with the DOE. We can be as strict as we want with enforcing policy. And so we're going to wait to learn how the DOE is handling it at the middle school building. And then we can always add additional safety measures if we feel needed. If you read the health considerations document that we sent out, that gives you an idea about what we're thinking we'll do. If there's a case confirmed in our school, we would shut the whole school building down. We know that some schools are only shutting down a class or a grade level. So right now we would shut the whole school building down for ourselves so we could do a thorough cleaning. But we will have to get back to you about how that will work with the DOE school. Question 24 is, were the registration packets mailed or emailed? I have a new scholar, we haven't received it. They were emailed. That's a new process for us. Please check your spam. We actually just went over all of our new scholars today, and we're still missing a lot. So we think they went out, you didn't get it. The email should come from Teacherease. But our operations team is actually going student by student of who was accepted and making personal calls. Once again, email me. My email address will be shared at the end. I already got a few emails from parents that are really quick. You email me during the webinar and I'll make sure we follow up with you. Question 25, what color will the uniforms be and how can I purchase them? So the uniforms are the same as they've always been. We'll send you that information, just not to go through it right now, because I know this has been a long webinar, but you will get all the information on uniforms tomorrow. We will send it out in the follow-up email. Question 26, I filled out the form for remote learning. How can I change it to hybrid before September 8th? So I believe, Ms. Huza, correct me if I'm wrong, they can go in at any time and change their response. Is that accurate?
So if you filled it out for remote learning, you don't need to change it before September 8th because our school is launching, both the middle school and high school will only launch for remote learning September 8th. When we get closer to our October 5th reopening for hybrid at the middle school and high school, we will send out an additional survey that if you want to change your response from the survey that you just took, you can do that. So if you filled out that you want your child to continue remote and we're going back October 5th, and now you want them to go hybrid, you can fill out the survey, and then you can place that you want to move hybrid. If you want to stay remote, you don't have to do anything as long as we know that that was your original preference. But no changes have to be made for September 8th. Everyone will be remote.
All right, everyone, we're down to 2 more questions. It's like a marathon, but we're getting through it. So question 27, if a child or teacher gets sick due to COVID, what steps will the school take? So once again, Ms. Huza, do you mind screen sharing the health considerations document again so people can see it? This is the document that, once again, is a draft, and it's our idea. So if someone gets sick with COVID, that individual will be quarantined, but the whole school—
I'm going to pull it back up.
Excuse me?
I'm going to pull it back up.
Oh, thank you. But I will just say in short, we would shut the entire school building down to do a thorough cleaning and assess next steps. The document also says that, we will be assessing when we go back to the building safety on a daily basis. And so if we feel that it's a bigger issue or we need more time, we would be as conservative as possible with shutting the school building down to clean and or, figure out next steps. But that document called Health Considerations goes into that in detail. And then number 28, are we checking temperatures before entering the building? So the answer is yes. So in the we have an arrival procedure that includes temperature check, a list of questions. And so we have started practicing with that with staff members this week. It's our first time. We want to make sure we've gone through that. So we're training different screeners and we've been doing that starting. So yes, temperature checks will happen before entering the building. So with that said, congratulations to the panelists. We got through the questions and we just have a few more slides just to go over some next steps. And so the next slide, we're going to share slide 21, which just says we have some next steps for August. So our next steps for August are we will host another webinar as we get closer before remote learning launches. So if you have more specific questions about the remote learning instructional program, we will have another opportunity, and we're considering breaking it up by middle school versus high school. So it's very school specific. So watch your email for that. B, scholars will get individualized schedules. C, don't forget, pick up supplies at the building. You will get a phone call and we will send out information about when to come get your Chromebooks, your headphones, your gift, your supplies. D, we have staff preparing and practicing for both remote and in-person instruction. As I said, we have staff in the building starting this week and then more staff joining us later in August as a way to start testing out how things will look. And so we want our staff to be really prepared. So when your scholars come back, we all feel confident about how things will run. And so we are practicing and preparing as we speak. And then E, I have stakeholder groups. So there's several parents who are on this call, the webinar, who are part of that. And so I actually have a little group. There's a group of about 19 people that are giving me feedback as we go and helping figure some issues out. And so I'll have more meetings with the stakeholder group to continue to revise our plans. In September, we'll make a determination about going back to the building. So that's going to be based on public health information. And ultimately, do we feel that we can have a safe and secure return to school? And so we'll, assess at that point and let everybody know about going back to the building. But our hope is that we can go back to the building. We will confirm decisions with you about staying fully remote or moving to hybrid. And then obviously in September, if we're going back to the building, we would have more webinars that would talk all about safety and health. So we would talk in depth with you about that. So the next slide is parent contact information. I just have to reiterate, make sure we have your email and your phone. Call our main office if you need to check. That's highlighted in yellow with the correct numbers. And if you look at the last bullet, that's my email address. My email's been blowing up since the webinar, so continue, send me emails. And if I can't answer it, I will make sure that someone gets back to you. So thank you for everyone who's quick and emailed me as we were going. And our last note, I realized this, I actually made this slide while we were meeting, is I realized that for some of our brand new parents who are registered, this is your first time meeting us. And so I understand it's like, we're meeting you and it's a little awkward. We're shoving all this information at you. There's a lot going on with schools right now, but we do look forward to seeing you at orientation sessions. So if you're brand new, we will have a more traditional orientation where we walk through our values as a school. what normal school looks like before the pandemic, what you can expect from us. We hope tonight was a good welcome to who we are and how we operate. We really want to include parents and give as much information out, but there will be a lot more information at the middle school and high school orientations later this month.
And then Ms.
So,
Franco,
yeah.
I'm just going to stop screen sharing because Mr. Philomene is going to present the health considerations document just so
Great.
parents can see again what that looks like.
Great. No pressure, Mr. Filming, at all. There's no pressure. You just have 80 people watching you. Don't
He's
hit the
doing
wrong button.
he's doing me such a favor. I can't present and navigate my screen, and I was like, oh, we don't need that anymore, and I hit X.
So I would just want to make sure you see. So this is the document called Health Considerations. It is a draft. It's linked into the stakeholder guide, so you can link it. We will give you a formal, PDF version translated into languages when it's finalized. But once again, we want you to read this and start telling us your questions or concerns about going back to the building, because that gives us the ability to change this before we even go back to the building. And so please make sure you read through it, especially if returning to the building is causing you anxiety. Hopefully this will give you some comfort in how we're thinking, but also give you an opportunity to really involve yourself in the process. So with that said, does anyone on the panel have any last words or anything you want to share before we go? No? So for all of our parents and attendees, you're going to get a very long follow-up email tomorrow with a lot of links and documents. So please make sure you go through it. Please make sure, Ms. Huza, if you could just put up the, or Mr. Fleming, I don't know if you have it, the slide with my email address. Please email me if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll make sure I get the answers back to you. And remember, I'm the COVID coordinator, so I really want to make sure that I'm here to support you. So with that said, we want to thank everyone. Have a great rest of your night, and we will see you on Zoom soon. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. And I guess panelists, if you want to stay on for a few minutes so we can debrief next steps. I think we can stop recording now, Ms. Benway, as well.